I'm Nick Yulman. I'm one of the artists here at Regeneration. My piece is called New York City Immigration Song, and it's a data representation of immigration patterns to New York City in sound. So it's a 12-foot wall map with piano wires stretched across it, and it takes census data dating back to 1855 and translates that into this musical pattern. So every piano wire represents a different path of immigration, and the length of the wire dictates the note that's played. And then the number of people that came over in the current census year that's playing dictates the duration of the note. So it's sort of a musical composition created by the data.
My name is CJ Pong. I did a project called 99 Plus. What I did was I visited a lot of different dollar stores in Queens and to different neighborhoods like the Chinese neighborhood, the Hispanic, Puerto Rican neighborhood, and just look at all the different dollar stores. And I gathered a lot of the materials there and then combined them with my different microcontrollers and computer cooling fan to animate all these objects together.
So this object came from all this area?
The object, not everything, because things like the computer chip, certain computer things, is not from it. But the other, I guess the support, a lot of the supporting structures are. So it's kind of, I'm trying to find something that exists in all neighborhoods, and then put those things together, and then using computer and technology to kind of unify them, working as a single unit.
I'm Carl Skelton. I'm a co-founder of the Gotham Innovation Greenhouse, which we're setting up here in New York City. And I'm here at the Regeneration show at the invitation of Steve Dietz and Amanda Parks with the Betaville Massively Multiplayer platform for collaborative urban design, public art development applications. The particular use we've made of it for this show was actually to work with students in area schools to develop hypothetical exhibits for an equally hypothetical next World's Fair, because of course the Hall of Science was built for the 1964 World's Fair on the same site as the 1939 World's Fair, and it seemed to us that it ought to get back into the future business. And the curatorial premise of the Regeneration show was a really good stimulus for us to see about bringing the public discourse media into the educational sector and then back out into the science and technology education sector's approach to culture. And we've had a terrific time. We've had 3 schools working with it. And so it's a very eclectic mix where I've got conceptual artists working with this for museum installations. I've got a development team designing a university in it from Colorado and Germany and Montreal and New York for Haiti. We have some speculative waterfront projects coming together in 5 or 6 cities now, and the same thing can be in these applications as well. So if you look up there, we set it up with a touch screen here for a museum installation. Was a student in Germany, actually, at the Hochschule Bremen, built the touchscreen controller, which is now plugged into it, so we could use it here. But if you look up and to the left there, that big thing was Scott, who's around here someplace. He said, at some point in the future, there will be a World's Fair where the idea that there used to be great big metal machines that drank fossil fuel and ran around farting particulate matter into the atmosphere will seem as crazy as a T-Rex might to us. And so what he made was out of parts of machines, actually from the Google 3D warehouse, he collaged them into various large animals. There's a whale in the lake. Facing this elephant, there's a triceratops. And of course, when you go to Betaville, what you see is the fairgrounds, pretty well naked, but each one of those yellow wedges represents an idea, maybe a little crazier than that idea, or maybe not so crazy. Some of them are for environmental installations, some of them are visualizations of a ton of CO2, and others are works of art.
Hello, my name is Ricardo Miranda, and I'm an artist here based in Brooklyn. I built a video game and networked robots that help you figure out the game. So the game is about being an undocumented immigrant to the United States, and in the game you control the character who represents an undocumented immigrant, and it's an activist immigrant, a dreamer, who has decided to come out with the status of undocumented in order to fight for the status of resident. And the figures represent an older generation, which is, in this case, a traditional nuclear family generation that are enablers to help the virtual character along. So you play the game, and these figures are networked to the game. They watch you play the game, and they help you figure out how to beat the game. So that's the project. I'm a first generation Nicaraguan. My parents are from Nicaragua, and I was born here in the United States. And although I'm not undocumented, I recognize some of the difficulties of being an immigrant, and I worked with a few undocumented immigrants to conceptualize the game and help me think about how the play might reflect the realities.
My name is Scott Kildall, and I'm an artist from San Francisco, California, and the project that I'm doing here for Regeneration is called 2049. And it's an exhibit with sculptures, video, and audio pieces. So it's a very complex exhibit. There's a lot of different pieces in there. All the artworks from 2049 were made at the San Francisco Dump last year when I was a resident artist out there, and I brought them out to the East Coast from the West Coast, symbolically, kind of like the year 2049. It's the handshake of East meets West, and really thinking about issues of what life is going to be like in the year 2049. And my proposition is that we're going to be mining our own landfills, our own garbage, for precious resources, because we throw away so much stuff and materials now that could be really useful. With those resources, I'm making inventions, and I'm also inviting anyone to submit their own invention as a description, and it's going to go inside a time capsule and to be opened in the year 2049. The time capsule will be buried at the grounds of the New York College of Science.
My name's Marissa John.
And I'm Stephanie Rothenberg.
And we're part of REV, the nonprofit organization that produced World's Fair 2.0.
And REV is a nonprofit based in New York City, and we do a lot of projects working with underserved communities, with youth, trying to give visibility to a lot of their issues.
So our goal is to we use different kinds of media to spark the public imagination and accelerate social change.
So for World's Fair 2.0, within the context of the Regeneration show, we wanted to do something that was about the landscape here, about the community. And so what the project is an interactive tour that takes you through the museum that looks at the former history of the 1939 and 1964 World's Fairs. And some of the main people that were instrumental in creating the fairs, and the corporations that also contributed. and really looking at this utopian illusions of progress and democracy, and how they both shaped Queens and sort of shaped cities around the country, looking at key figures such as Robert Moses, Jane Jacobs, Henry Ford.
Yeah, so what we're looking at is, I mean, the World's Fairs are interesting phenomena because they bring together different kinds of government, local, state, federal. Also, in particular, in the World's Fair here in New York, 1939-1964, in the 39 World's Fair was the first time that corporations were integrally involved in shaping the World's Fair. So then you see that in how the World's Fair plays out, and what kinds of, how the different rides are themed, and what kinds of things that the American public is being introduced to. So for an example, the Model T, which is a precursor to our contemporary automobiles, that's newly introduced in 1939 World's Fair, as are roads and different ways in which American cities can be expanded. So this is kind of prompting and instilling the desire in the American public to advocate and want roads and freeway systems and, you know, the 20th century suburbs. So what we're looking at is the power plays and the dynamics behind the World's Fair, and how we can think about our contemporary context here in Queens, and kind of unpack that and trace that back to certain specific people and certain interests, and also raise questions about who benefits from these decisions. Are there ways that they could have been different, and are there ways that we can make them different in the future? So that's how this piece ties into the theme of regeneration, is in raising critical questions, as Stephanie said, about utopianism, and also and raising the question of how we would like to see things in the future.
Okay, hey, so I'm Sokka Lieberman. I'm a media artist, and I describe myself really as a nerd artist. And what I do is I try to do things with technology to make magic with technology. And so what I'm doing here, I'm in this exhibition called Regeneration. I was really interested in, especially this kind of, we're in Queens, we're in this part of New York which is very rich in diversity, where people are coming here from all over the world. And I love this idea of capturing faces, of thinking about faces, how people look, and building faces out of faces, taking people's faces and rearranging them to create new faces, and almost as a kind of exploration or a celebration of what we look like collectively as people. So this project, the way it works is that you sit down and your face, it becomes almost a kind of tool. It's like you're a puppeteer, and you're puppeting other people's faces. But as you're using it, it's also recording parts of your face. So the interaction is the content. The more people that use it, the larger the database is, and the more kind of rich diversity, you know, you have with the software.